My name is Mike Johanek.
And my name is Sigal Ben-Porath, and together we wrote a book in a series on the history of philosophy of key policies in education, and our book is on school choice. And we were interested in seeing what are some of the key aspects or key moments in the history of school choice in the United States, and then consider what are some of the challenges that we can see in implementing school choice today, and what are the philosophical or normative or theoretical considerations that we should take into account when we are designing and implementing school choice policies.
So we recognize that the issue is one that elicits very strong feelings and opinions. And what we hope for, I think, for the book is that it become a useful tool for discussions, to broaden the discussions and deepen the discussions. And so we did that by trying to look at it through both lenses, of the lens of history and the lens of philosophy, as Sigal just mentioned. We start also with the premise that while the questions are serious and real, they're not necessarily new. And that they can be assisted by at least looking at how we've wrestled with some of these kinds of issues over time, and how even the way in which we phrase and talk about it might be misleading for what we're really trying to talk about. So, for instance, the whole idea that that this is a novel notion of having market-based school reforms. We've had market-based schooling since colonial period, we argue. And there are questions involved about who we want to be as a people and what function the schools will play in that. And that those are some of the central questions that we need to wrestle with. So in the history section, instead of doing just a sweep across all of the periods, we focus on three different eras to look at the colonial and early republic, to look at the mix of choices when schooling itself was this wonderful mixture of kinds of institutions that are there and what was involved in that. We then look at when the common school has succeeded as a dominant form of schooling, but you have a large private education system run by the Catholic schools as a parallel private system, and the questions that arise in terms of how do you regulate and work across different systems when you have private and public provision. And then finally looking at the period post-1954, after the Brown decision, and the large impact of other social policies on what is happening in schooling, and the challenges to the sort of accepted one best system, if you will, to use historian David Tayek's phrase, that really are occurring for decades prior to school choice happening. And so what are we really talking about when we get to school choice? We think it's a bit of a misnomer, and we try to lend some history to that conversation, as well as some normative analysis as well.
So when we look at some of the philosophical literature about school choice, we start off by asking to what extent education is a private good, a private benefit that an individual gets from increasing their own knowledge, or that a parent gets from supporting their child's development and learning, versus the extent to which it's actually a collective or a shared or a social good or benefit, where society really gets to decide what are the kind of things that children need to know and need to be able to do, and how they might be educated for this purpose. And we look at some of the challenges regarding people's ability to make decisions in this very complex arena, the ways in which paternalism or the role of society or of government in making decisions about schooling for a certain family or for parents regarding their own children. And then we think about some of the goals that school choice supporters set out to achieve. For instance, various types of school choice policies and of schools of choice, such as charter schools, were designed as a place where innovation can flower and where we can try out new ideas and new approaches to learning and to teaching. And so we consider to what extent is this promise actually fulfilled? Can choice schools be more innovative? And to the extent that they can be innovative, to what extent can they remain accountable to the public that they serve? Or similarly, schools of choice are set out to accomplish greater equality under the assumption that because more wealthy parents can really, through residential choice, make decisions about where they live and therefore where their kids might be attending school. School choice policies are meant to equalize or to create a more level playing field whereby under-resourced or more low-income parents can also choose schools for their parents. And so we look at the extent to which this promise is indeed possible to fulfill this promise in the context of existing school choice policies, and similarly thinking about racial inequities and the extent to which school choice policies promise to reduce them, but in fact are oftentimes both designed to allow for racial separation or otherwise just enable and promote racial separation, and what that might mean for democratic institutions and societies. And so we basically conclude by pointing at some of the key ways in which current policies related to school choice are rooted in historical precedent, and also point at some of the ways in which they are in fact really new, the involvement of the business sector, the involvement of large philanthropic entities, and their influence both on which schools are available and on the policy that is allowing for choice to occur within the system, and how we might think as a society about the ways in which our school choice policies allow us to educate our children, the next generation of citizens and workers and people, members in our society, and how we can make up our collective mind about the kind of schools that we want to provide all children.